Hi guys, it's Kirsty. In today's video, I want to discuss why recovery takes time and why it can't be rushed. But before I go into that, I would like to ask, please subscribe by clicking on the subscribe button below in order to stay up to date with new videos as they're released. So I think this is an important topic to cover because quite often when we when we begin our recovery journey, we might have in mind kind of when we want to be recovered by, or kind of certain expectations, or perhaps we've heard other recovery stories and we're thinking based on that it should take us X amount of time. But the thing is here is that it varies very much from person to person. And it's very difficult to put a timeline on recovery because recovery, firstly, it's not linear, as we say often in the OCD community. You'll see this written on social media a lot. You'll see it discussed in literature and on various videos. You've heard it discussed on various videos on this channel, that the recovery process involves sometimes setbacks, and the overcoming of those setbacks then adds up to kind of what we're learning on our recovery journey. So, as I say, it's not a linear process. Recovery is up and down. But also one of the things is that if we find ourselves putting a timeline on recovery, and we're sort of pushing to get recovered by a certain point, sometimes that sort of desperation to be recovered by that point can turn into a fear of not getting recovered. And the problem is that when we hold these fears, and it can start to create anxiety for us. And when it creates anxiety for us, that's when our OCD can latch onto it. And that's when we might find our OCD latching onto recovery. So that's where we might find ourselves, obsessing over, what exposures we need to be doing, obsessing over doing recovery right, doubting our recovery, being scared of never recovering. So the idea of putting a timeline on recovery can be counterintuitive, and I've certainly fallen into that trap myself, and found myself kind of upsetting myself further on my recovery journey by noting it's been X amount of time and I'm still not recovered. It's been X amount of time and I'm still not recovered, and I'm still not recovered, and that's really bad and I might be doomed. Or in fact, it's been this long since I've been working on recovery, I'm still not recovered, therefore my theme absolutely must be true. It must be real because I'm not recovered by this point, and so is recovered by this point. So you can see how it can end up not being very helpful to us when we kind of have timelines on recovery, and when we put pressure on ourselves to be recovered within a certain amount of time. The really, really, really annoying thing is that it takes as long as it takes. That's incredibly frustrating to hear, but if you can adopt that attitude, then it helps you to overcome the fear of not recovering. And so it helps reduce, the chance of you getting latched onto, the fear of not recovering and things like that. You want to make sure that you're doing the recovery work. You want to make sure that you're doing that. But doing that whilst being aware of the fact that you can't force recovery and that you have to just keep chipping away at it. And this is where frustration tolerance can come into the OCD recovery process. We've got a few videos on this channel. Actually, Nick's done a couple recently about building frustration tolerance on the OCD recovery journey and how important it can be, because if we can kind of learn to be a bit more patient with ourselves and with the process, then we're not adding further kind of upset and frustration onto ourselves about the fact that we're not recovered as quickly as we'd like to be. If you've been working on recovery for, say, 6 months or something, and you're still feeling anxious, if you're putting timelines on yourself and you're getting frustrated, you can end up feeling, extreme. You could get yourself very angry or quite depressed about the fact that you're still anxious. So you're layering on other kind of disturbed emotions onto the existing one that you're trying to shift. And when you're doing that, you're kind of adding more space between yourself and addressing the initial kind of anxiety. Because if then you're kind of having to deal with feelings of anger or depression surrounding that anxiety, that's an extra layer to deal with. So if you can work on your beliefs around recovery and what it entails, and patience with yourself, and a degree of life acceptance when it comes to recovery and how long it may take, it can really help you to continue staying focused on your goal. And that's, the reducing anxiety and learning, switching off the anxious response and learning how we can do this and how we can make it a habit. So that brings me to my next point when I say about, learning how we can do this. So when you think about it, learning to drive, it's a skill. It's a new thing that you learn. It's, you learn sort of new rules and it becomes second nature after a while. And the same can be said for OCD recovery. You're learning about OCD firstly, and takes time for you to get to remember, that's a potential OCD trap. I don't want to fall into that, because it's so easy, because it's been developed, these habits have been developed over many years, during our lives and repeatedly as well. Obviously, let's not forget the repetitive nature of OCD, hence the obsessive side of it, the frequency with which we have been responding in compulsive ways over time to our obsessions. It will take time for us to pick up on these things that we're doing and pick up and, start unpacking, the various kind of compulsions or avoidances that we may be doing, and learning new responses to our obsessions as well. And each time, in the moment, sometimes we can find ourselves performing compulsions, within a split second. So it can take time to recognize that we have a choice. But it also takes time to slow down the thought process as well, because when we're highly anxious, we'll think quite quickly in racing thoughts, and we'll react, knee-jerk reaction mentally, I'm uncomfortable, what to do. Once you are working on recovery and you bring your fear levels down, anxiety levels down, you do start to gain more control of that cognitive side. So you can, once you've toned down that anxious response, you start to gain a bit more sort of choice over how you respond. But that takes time, because you've held on to certain beliefs in your life that have caused you to have an anxious response to certain triggers, whether they're external or internal, with our feelings, thoughts, sensations, urges, whatever it might be. We've kind of had these beliefs over time that these things, that whatever these things mean about us or our life or what might happen, is absolutely unbearably terrifying, and we couldn't possibly stand it. So it takes time for us to change our beliefs about maybe ourselves or the world, or about what these things mean. It's one thing learning that thoughts are just thoughts, but it's another thing to truly believe it and react appropriately to that idea that thoughts are just thoughts, like some people might be able to, when we think that the thoughts might mean something, and we think that's absolutely terrifying and unbearable. We couldn't possibly risk the smallest chance that that might be true. So, of course, it's going to take time to shift the beliefs that we've held about, the way life should be, or the way we should be, or the thoughts we should be having, the way we should be feeling. Like I say, it's one thing learning about something, like, for example, with ROCD, relationship OCD, it's one thing learning that love is a choice and reading about all of that, which is a huge relief when you're first suffering from ROCD, when you start reading about these things, that love actually is a choice and you don't have to do everything based on your feelings. But it's another thing to truly believe that, when previously we've held on to the idea that it's terrible to stay in a relationship if you're having a doubt about it, or you're questioning your love just once or something. It takes time to shift these beliefs and make work on being a bit more flexible in our thinking. And as I said before, to build frustration tolerance. All of these things take time, because the beliefs that have caused us distress previously have been there and ingrained and reinforced by certain behaviours So it takes time for us to reinforce new flexible beliefs and for this to become a habit. And then, of course, from time to time, because of certain things that happen in life or whatever's going on with us internally, or maybe we've not been well recently physically, from time to time, we might find ourselves having a trickier time of our OCD again and a bit of what feels like a setback. Then we may find ourselves slipping into, back into our old, irrational beliefs that we held before and reinforcing them again. So then, you're coming back out of that setback and you're having to work on reinforcing the new rational beliefs again. So this process takes time. But what I want to reiterate there when I mentioned the setback is that when each time you dig yourself out of a setback, and I'm saying dig, it can feel like that in the moment, you're practicing kind of the skills. You're getting to re-practice the skills that you learned originally that set you on your recovery journey. So it's not a bad thing. But what I'm saying here is that over time, it takes a good amount of repetition of reinforcing your new beliefs before that becomes more like second nature without having to stop and think, oh, I feel uncomfortable. Oh, this is really bad. I want to do something about it, but I'm working on being more flexible and I want to tolerate this uncertainty. So I'm going to choose to just continue focusing on the washing up or whatever it is. These things that it takes time, and it can be hard sometimes not to revert back to old habits from time to time when life throws challenges at you, which it most certainly does. So again, this practice of not returning to old habits, this takes time as well, and this takes practice. This takes, might be after sort of different challenges in life are thrown at you, like things being a bit uncertain with perhaps a friendship or a particular month where you've been unwell or your partner's been unwell, so it's been a bit stressful. All of these things are opportunities for us to continue reinforcing our new beliefs. But it takes time and practice. And this is why the recovery journey takes time and does require a degree of patience with yourself and with life in general. Not holding certain rules about, oh, it should take this amount of time for me because it took so-and-so this amount of time. It's really helpful if you can let go of these kind of demands. Firstly, of that this is the way life should be. But secondly, I should be able to do this. If I can't do this, then I'm completely useless. Or I can't do this. I'm taking me longer because I'm stupid. Damn, why am I so stupid? This is not helpful. You've got to be kind to yourself. This is, a big part of the patience with the recovery process, as I've said, life acceptance and self-acceptance, and a huge amount of self-compassion as well. And that can help you to be a bit more patient with yourself and not beat yourself up if it's taking you a while to kick certain compulsions, and not beating yourself up if you find yourself ruminating or, God, I can't believe I fell back into that the other day. It happens. And it's recognizing, even if it's in hindsight, that it's happened, that helps you to kind of gain the awareness maybe for next time. And even if next time you trip up, evaluating and try again the following time. So as I say, these things, it takes time. And also there are layers to OCD in terms of when we're working on certain themes, certain themes that we found particularly sticky, we can find ourselves having sort of done exposures and worked on that theme, but we're still experiencing, symptoms. And it might be that it's because we've, like I said, latched onto our recovery journey. And it takes time to learn that can happen. It takes time to learn about backdoor spikes. Like, my anxiety has dropped, but I'm still having obsessions. This is clearly evidence that my theme is real. And I need to make sure that doesn't happen, or I need to get certainty over that. So reverting into compulsions again. But once we learn about the backdoor spike and we get better at spotting it when it's sort of, those kind of those suggestions that come up, we get better at recognizing the traps that OCD can throw out and reduce the amount that we're getting tripped up by that. And there's just one last thing I wanted to mention, is that from time to time, something might crop up in life that might take you away from your recovery temporarily. Perhaps you've been working on your recovery, but you become physically unwell and you need to focus on that, or somebody you love becomes physically unwell and might need you to support them, or it might be to do with children or falling pregnant or something like that, or it might be to do with an unexpected redundancy. Life can throw certain things at you, and we mostly want to make our recovery from OCD a big priority in our life, but from time to time we will be less able to put as much energy into our recovery temporarily. And unfortunately, there are certain things in life that might happen that we can't control. It might be a bereavement, for example, hopefully not, but a bereavement of a loved one. That means that you're kind of taken away a little bit from your recovery journey because you're having to look after yourself in other ways or others, or organise the practicalities of, such circumstances. So there will be times in life where we're unable to give it as much energy with our recovery, and again, it's having some kindness with ourselves in those circumstances, that if we're not able to give OCD recovery our full effort in those particular exceptional circumstances, it's trying to hold patience and compassion for ourselves with that, and also trying not to add on layers of frustration, tearing our hair out about it. So I hope this video has been helpful in terms of talking about why it's good to try and hold some patience with ourselves and with life generally, trying to change our perspective on timelines for OCD recovery and having OCD itself. There are different aspects to this, like I say, working on, life acceptance and self-acceptance. And we've got videos about that on this channel that I recommend checking out. And as I said, working on frustration tolerance as well. Checking out those videos might be useful for you, because that can help you to maintain a good degree of patience with yourself and life on your recovery journey, and not add extra layers of frustration and anger and sort of feeling low on top of the fact that you're struggling with anxiety and trying to reduce compulsions. So I hope this video has been helpful, and do take care. Bye.